The sky was supposed to be empty that night, but instead, fire fell from above. People in Sector 9 screamed as the peaceful dome city of Viren was ripped apart by beams of unknown energy. No one knew who attacked. The defense system failed in the first 5 seconds. Satellites exploded before anyone could send a signal. It wasn't a war. It was an execution. Commander Jace Thorne ran through the smoke and rubble. His leg was bleeding, but he didn't stop. Somewhere in the eastern block, a cry had echoed a voice that wasn't human. It didn't beg for help. It commanded it. The ruins hissed with heat. A part of the dome had collapsed, exposing the once safe city to the dry and poisonous wind from outside. Most humans would die within minutes without a respirator, but Jace had trained for worse. He covered his mouth and kept moving. Behind a broken transport ship, he found her. At first, he thought she was a child. Curled up, glowing faintly, with bright red hair and something flickering across her arms like living tattoos. But when her eyes opened, they burned gold like a furnace. She was not human. Jace pointed his weapon, breathing hard. She didn't flinch. Her lips moved slowly, speaking a language he didn't know. Her voice was soft, almost too soft to hear. But one word cut through it clearly. Blood. He hesitated. Her arm was bleeding. Not red, her blood glowed pink. It shimmered like a living thing. Without thinking, he moved closer, crouched, and reached for her wound. She didn't pull away. The moment his fingers touched her skin, a strange pulse ran through his chest. Something sharp and cold bit into his thoughts, then melted like warm honey. His hand shook. His body felt heavy. She gasped and reached out. Her claws, or maybe they were fingers, touched his chest. Not to harm him, but to steady him. Jace looked down and saw her cut had closed. Her blood had healed her. It was like nanotech, but it felt alive. A cracking sound made them both jump. Jace turned, gun ready. But it wasn't an enemy. It was a wall collapsing behind them. He turned back to her and realized she was trying to stand. He helped her. She stood taller than he expected, maybe his height or more. Her red hair moved like it had its own breath. She looked at him with surprise, then confusion, then a sudden flicker of fear. She said something again. The word drank echoed. This time, Jace blinked. Drank? What did she mean? He looked at his fingers. Some of her glowing blood was still on them. A tiny drop had passed his lips when he wiped his mouth earlier. He didn't even think about it. Her expression changed. Wide eyes, trembling lips, she stepped back. You drank my blood, she whispered. And then her voice rose. Do you know what that means on my planet? He froze. The air felt colder. The distant screams and sirens faded. She wasn't just afraid. She looked bonded, terrified, attached, as if some ancient law had just been broken. Then, behind them, a distant roar cracked the silence. Ships, hundreds of them, entering the atmosphere. The enemy wasn't done. But neither was the mystery between the soldier and the alien girl. Jace didn't have time to ask questions, but he could feel everything had changed. The alien girl, her skin still glowing faintly, kept staring at him as if he had committed something unthinkable. Her lips moved as if trying to speak, but the words came out in fragments. He couldn't understand the language, but the fear in her golden eyes was clear. A siren blared from the city ruins. The sound echoed sharply, warning all remaining survivors to evacuate. Jace ignored it. He had no ship, no unit, and no idea where backup might be. But the girl needed help, and she couldn't survive on her own. He touched his cum. No signal. The tower was likely destroyed. Still, he tried again, whispering for anyone to respond. The static replied with silence. The girl tilted her head, then gently placed a finger on his chest as if asking what he was doing. Jace motioned for her to follow. She didn't move at first. Then slowly, cautiously, she stepped beside him. She still looked like she didn't trust him. But she also didn't want to be alone. They walked through rubble and smoke, the shattered city falling apart around them. Jace's boots crunched over broken glass. Every shadow made him tighten his grip on his rifle. The enemy wasn't just above anymore. They were landing. The girl flinched as one of the dropships passed overhead. Its engine screamed, casting red light over the ruins. Jace pulled her into cover behind a half-collapsed wall. They crouched, breathing hard, close enough that he could feel her strange warmth beside him. He studied her again. She was definitely not from any known species. Red hair, golden eyes, glowing markings like living flame. She had no tail. Just ears cat-like and alert. She wore jewelry, not armor. A crown, delicate earrings, and elegant bands around her fingers. She whispered something again. Her voice shook. This time, Jace heard the word more clearly. Bound. Her hand went to her chest, then to his. Blood. Bound. She repeated it with urgency. Jace shook his head. I didn't mean to, he said. It was just a drop. He pointed to her wound, then to his lips. She nodded. Her expression didn't soften. If anything, it deepened in panic. The girl stepped back slightly, holding her hand to her head as if dizzy. Her skin shimmered brighter for a moment. Then, she collapsed against the wall, sliding to the ground. Jace caught her before she fell completely. Hey, stay with me, he said firmly. She wasn't unconscious. Her body was reacting. The blood she lost must have weakened her. Jace looked at her wrist. The tattoos there pulsed like veins of fire. He pulled a small vial from his belt. It was basic nutrient fluid standard field. Issue. He opened it and held it out. She stared at the bottle like it was poison. Then she whispered, only yours. Jace frowned. What? She reached for his arm. Her claws lightly scratched his skin. A few drops of blood welled up. She placed her hand over the spot and pressed gently. Then she closed her eyes and breathed deeply, as if his blood itself was a cure. It hit him hard. She needed him to heal. Not food, not water, his blood. Not because she was a monster, but because of the bond. She had bound herself to him when he tasted her blood. And now the connection ran both ways. Jace didn't know how deep this custom went on her planet, but it was clearly sacred. To her, this was not a small accident. It was a vow. A tie that couldn't be undone. He looked around. They couldn't stay there. Dropships were landing closer now. Soldiers tall, insectoid ones began sweeping the streets. Their weapons glowed cold blue. Death followed them like a shadow. Jace pulled her to her feet. We move now, he whispered. She didn't argue. She leaned into him, trusting him, even while shaking from whatever pain she was hiding. They made their way through the alleyways, avoiding patrols. Twice, they stopped as enemies passed inches away. The girl's breathing was shallow. Her body was overheating. She was burning from inside. He found an old transport truck buried under rubble. Its cabin was crushed, but the back had space to hide. He pulled her inside and covered the opening with a sheet of metal. Inside it was dark and quiet. She leaned back against the wall, looking at him with heavy eyes. Blood shared, she whispered again. Then, softly, now you are mine and I am yours. Jace didn't know how to respond. The words carried more weight than a marriage vow. He barely knew her name. Yet somehow, her blood flowed in him, and his now in her. Two lives linked by accident. Or maybe, by fate. Outside, the enemy hunted. But inside that dark space, something even more dangerous had awakened between them. Asterisk. The silence inside the broken truck was tense, like a string pulled too tight. Jace sat with his back against the metal wall, his rifle across his lap. The alien girl rested nearby, her breathing slow but steady. Her glowing markings had dimmed. but they were still visible in the dark. She looked more stable now, but not safe. Outside, enemy patrols moved in organized patterns. Their steps echoed through the ruined streets. Jace had counted 4 dropships landing in the last hour. He estimated at least 40 soldiers had been deployed. Not scavengers, not raiders. Trained killers. The girl opened her eyes again. She looked at him like she was trying to memorize his face. Then she raised her hand, pointed to herself, and said a single word, Vela. Jace repeated it slowly, unsure of the pronunciation. Vela. She nodded. Then she pointed to him, her expression waiting. He hesitated before saying, Jace. Vela tried to repeat it. Jace. Her voice was soft, curious. It was the first time she smiled. Only slightly, but it was real. A strange warmth stirred inside him. They were still strangers, but something had formed a fragile understanding. Not just because of the blood, but because they were both survivors of something bigger than they understood. Jace reached into his bag and pulled out a small scanner. It wasn't much, just enough to detect nearby heat signatures. The screen flickered weakly. Energy levels were low, but he saw 4 red dots closing in from the west. Enemies, he said quietly. Vela tensed. Her ears twitched as if she could hear them without the scanner. She reached for the side of the truck and placed her palm against the wall. Her glowing tattoos brightened for a second, then faded again. What did you do? Jace asked. She made a shape in the air with her fingers like a circle, then a wave. He didn't understand the symbol, but the air inside the truck felt different. Cooler, calmer, like they were wrapped in something unseen. Then, outside, the sound of footsteps grew louder. 4 shadows passed by the truck. The soldiers paused. Right beside it, one of them tapped the metal with a claw. Jace held his breath. His finger tightened on the rifle's trigger. But then, the soldiers walked on. No alarms, no attacks. Just silence returning to the streets. Jace exhaled slowly. What was that? Vela looked at him with a calm expression. She raised 2 fingers and touched her chest, then pointed to the walls. Blood shield, she said. His eyes narrowed. You used your blood to hide us? She nodded. Then she reached into her cloak and pulled out a small shard of crystal. It glowed faintly. She placed it between them. This, she said. My people use it to track heart bonds. Jace stared at the crystal. Inside, a faint red thread moved gently. It pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. Vela pointed again. Bound, she whispered. There was no denying it now. Whatever rules her world followed, he had stepped into them fully. Accident or not, the bond was real and alive. They couldn't stay hidden forever. Jace knew the enemy would soon bring scanners, maybe drones. If they found Vela, they'd take her. If they found him with her, they'd kill them both. He looked at the map stored in his visor. There was an old mining tunnel half a mile east. Abandoned, but it led under the mountain. If they could reach it, they might escape the occupied zone. Jace motioned toward the exit. Vela understood. She stood, slowly, her balance returning. She looked weaker than before, but her determination was stronger. They moved at night, step by step, crossing ruined alleys and broken walls. Every few minutes, Jace scanned ahead. Twice they had to freeze as patrols passed just feet away. Vela pressed close to him, her hand never leaving his shoulder. When they reached the mountain edge, dawn had started to rise. Red light touched the tops of ruined buildings. The world looked painted in blood and ash. The entrance to the mining tunnel was blocked by debris. Jace dropped his rifle and began digging. Vela knelt beside him, using her hands too. The silence between them now felt more like teamwork than fear. Finally they cleared a gap, just enough for them to crawl through. Jace entered first, then helped pull her in. The tunnel inside was dark, cold, and damp. But it was safe for now. Vela sat down, exhausted. Jace sat across from her. He wanted to ask what the bond meant in full, what the consequences were, what would happen if it broke. But the words didn't come out. Instead, she looked at him and said, "You are my chosen. Now you carry my fate." And then, for the first time, she touched his face. Gently. Her fingers were warm, not strange. She didn't speak again. She didn't need to. Something powerful had begun, deep under the mountain, while a war raged above them. The mining tunnel stretched like a throat into the mountain. Silent and cold, Jace led the way with his rifle raised, flashlight clipped beneath the barrel. The light flickered as it moved across rusted pipes, broken tracks, and long-abandoned mining carts. Every sound they made echoed, warning anything that might still be listening. Vela followed closely behind. Her glowing tattoos lit faintly in the darkness. She touched the walls now and then, almost like she was reading them. Her steps were quiet, graceful, but uncertain. This world wasn't hers, and it showed. Jace paused at a sealed doorway. His scanner blinked red. No power. He pulled open a panel and rewired the circuit manually. Sparks shot out, and the door groaned open by a few inches. Just enough for them to slip through. The chamber beyond was wider. Old machinery filled the space, covered in dust and spiderwebs. In the center, a broken console blinked with a single green light. Emergency backup power, still alive after all these years. He knelt beside the console and began searching the system. "If I can access the emergency beacon," he muttered, "we might be able to send a signal out. Maybe someone's still listening." Vela didn't speak. She stood still, her eyes closed, as if listening to something far away. Then she opened them and said, "They are coming." Jace stopped typing. "You're sure?" She nodded. "They track me. My blood, my mind, even through stone." He stood up quickly. "Then we have to keep moving. There's another exit on the eastern side. If we make it there, we can disappear into the forest outside the range of their scans." Vela hesitated. "The bond, it pulls them, but I can stop it. If I burn it, I can cut the trail." Jay stared at her. "Burn the bond? What happens to you?" She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped forward and placed her hands on his chest. Her touch was warm. Her tattoos flared with light. "You gave me your blood. Now I give you my shield." He felt it. Again a pulse through his body. Like something ancient waking up, his chest tightened. His breath caught. But he didn't stop her. When she pulled back, a faint red glow wrapped around him like mist. Then it faded into his skin. Vela looked weaker, her shoulders trembling, but she stood tall. Jace whispered, "Why are you doing this?" "Because if you fall, I fall," she said calmly. They pressed onward. The tunnel narrowed and dipped downward. Water dripped from the ceiling. Somewhere ahead, machinery buzzed faintly, still alive under layers of time and rust. Suddenly, the lights above flickered. Then everything went black. Jace raised his flashlight again, but it flickered too. Vela's body began to glow brighter, her markings casting long shadows against the tunnel walls. She turned sharply and said, "They are here." Jace aimed his rifle toward the dark. "How close?" Before she could answer, a blast rocked the tunnel behind them. Dust and rocks showered down. A patrol had breached the door. Voices echoed harsh, inhuman, clicking through radios. Orders were being shouted. "Run," Jace growled. He grabbed Vela's hand and pulled her forward. They sprinted through the tunnel, dodging fallen beams and shattered rails behind them. The enemy moved fast, too fast. Light from their rifles painted the walls blue as they closed in. Then Vela turned and raised her hand. Her tattoos blazed like fire. She slammed her palm against the wall. A ripple of red light burst outward. The tunnel shook, and rocks rained down, sealing the passage. The blast cut off the enemy for now. Jace grabbed her again. "Come on. We don't stop now." They burst into a large chamber. This one was different. Metal walls, smooth floors, and a ceiling that looked recently reinforced. At the far end, a large pod sat in the center, surrounded by dormant screens. "What is this place?" Jace asked aloud. Vela approached the pod. "It's not human," she said quietly. "It's a seed vault, one of ours. My people built them long ago, for survival." Jace checked the system panel. Most of the tech was still active, powered by some internal core. Inside the pod, he saw a small container filled with bright red fluid like Vela's blood, but purer. Alive, that's what they want, Jace realized. Your blood. Your species. They're not just hunting you. They want what you are. Vela looked at him. They want the bond broken. You're a threat now. They fear what the blood makes. You. Jace clenched his fists. He had seen many wars, but never one fought over blood and belief. This wasn't just survival. This was sacred. And now he was part of it. The tunnel rumbled again. Dust fell from the ceiling. The sealed path wouldn't hold for long. Jace checked his rifle. One clip left. Not enough. Vela touched the seed pod. Her face was calm. If we light the blood, they will never take it. Jace stepped closer. You'll die. She looked at him, and for the first time there was fear in her eyes. Only if you let me. Jace stood in front of the seed pod, staring at the living red liquid inside. The air in the chamber grew warmer. Not from temperature, but from tension. The light from Vela's tattoos flickered weakly. Her energy was low, but her eyes remained strong. She was ready to give everything. Jace wasn't. You can't burn it, he said firmly. There has to be another way. Vela walked slowly around the pod. Her fingers touched its smooth surface, and the liquid inside responded by pulsing brighter. If they take it, she said, they will clone me. They will make weapons of my kind. And they will erase every trace of what we were. Jace stepped between her and the console. Then we protect it. We don't destroy it. You're not alone anymore. Vela tilted her head. You still don't understand. The bond is not just between us. It grows. If they take you, they can find others. The line spreads from your blood. Jace touched his chest. He felt no pain, no mark, but he believed her. He could feel something inside him alive and connected to her. A thread between hearts, now stretched by danger. Outside, the echoes of enemy voices grew louder. The rocks would not hold much longer. Jace scanned the room quickly. There were vents above, small but wide enough for them to crawl through. He pointed upward. There, we move through the vents. We take the core with us. Destroying it is the last option. Vela looked doubtful. If you fail to carry it, it will die. If it breaks, it poisons the ground. It must be protected like a child. Then I'll carry it like one. Jace replied. He opened the pod's control panel and carefully lifted the small vessel containing the glowing blood. It was warm to the touch and hummed with a strange energy. Vela placed her hands on his shoulders and whispered something in her own language. A blessing, perhaps. Together, they climbed into the vent. The metal groaned under their weight. Jace crawled first, holding the vessel close. Vela followed behind, her breathing shallow. Every few feet, she touched the walls, sending small pulses of her energy through them. The vents led through narrow shafts twisting like a maze. At one turn, Jace stopped. Below them was a lower chamber filled with enemy soldiers. 10 at least. They were scanning the walls, searching for something. One of them held a blood-sensing device. Vela whispered. They feel the bond. They know you carry me. Jace motioned for silence and kept crawling. Every second felt like a lifetime. Finally, the vent opened into a forgotten passage behind the mountain wall. Moss grew over the stones. A faint breeze touched his face. They had found a way out. He helped Vela down. Her legs shook beneath her. She was getting weaker. The bond was draining her faster than expected. Jace knew she wouldn't last much longer without rest or recovery. They moved through the old tunnel until it opened into the forest. Trees towered above them. The sunlight breaking through the branches painted the ground in gold. For a moment, it felt like peace. Jace lowered the vessel carefully and checked his scanner. No signals, no ships above. They had made it out of range, at least for now. Vela collapsed onto her knees. Jace rushed to her side. "What's wrong?" She looked at him with heavy eyes. "Too much. I gave you too much. The shield. The connection. I burned my own thread." "No," Jace said. "You're not dying. I am fading," she whispered. "Unless the bond is sealed fully. Unless you accept it." Jace stared at her confused. "I already did. I protected you. I carried the vessel." Vela shook her head. "Protection is not the same. The bond requires more. It must be chosen. Accepted by will, not by accident." He hesitated. "What happens if I accept it? You become part of my line, my people, my future. You cannot leave, you cannot break it, but I live. And so do those like me," she said. Jace looked into her eyes. They no longer glowed with power, but with something deeper: trust, hope, a plea not for survival, but for purpose. "I accept," he said finally. Vela leaned forward and placed her forehead against his. A warm light passed between them. The glow from her body transferred into his. His veins lit briefly. Then everything went still. She collapsed in his arms, not lifeless, but sleeping. Healing now that the bond was sealed by choice, not accident. And far above the forest, a new light appeared in the sky. The enemy ships paused, their sensors confused. Something in the signal had changed. The one they hunted had become something else. Jace looked down at the vessel beside him. It glowed brighter than ever. The future of her kind now rested in his hands. Vela slept in Jace's arms, her breathing now steady and slow. The forest around them was silent except for the soft rustle of wind in the trees. Jace had chosen a shaded spot between two thick roots. He had cleared the leaves and laid her down on his jacket. The pot of glowing blood rested beside her, still pulsing gently like a heartbeat. He kept watch, rifle loaded, eyes sharp. Every shadow felt like a threat. He had sealed the bond, but he didn't fully understand it. All he knew was that she had given everything to keep him alive, and now he had to do the same. Vela stirred. Her fingers twitched. Slowly, her eyes opened. The gold in them was dimmer, but still alive. When she saw him, her lips curved into a tired smile. "You stayed," she whispered. "Of course I did," Jace replied. She sat up slowly, supported by his arm. Her skin still glowed faintly, but the fire in her markings had lessened. She touched her chest, then his, then looked at the sky through the trees. "They still search," she said. "But they are confused. The signal is broken. The bond is sealed. I am not what I was, and neither are you," Jace nodded. "Then we use that. They're looking for a dying princess, not a bonded pair." Vela tilted her head. "You speak as if you are one of my kind now." Jace didn't answer immediately. He looked at the pod, then back at her. "Maybe I am," he said at last. She reached for the pod and placed her palm on it. The fluid inside glowed stronger. "This carries my people, our essence. If we can bring it to a sanctuary, we can awaken others. Not clones, not weapons, real lives. Where is the sanctuary?" Jace asked. Vela pointed toward the eastern horizon. "A cave of stars, hidden in a canyon. Made by my ancestors. Only my blood can open the path. And now yours too." Jace packed their gear quickly. He placed the pod inside a shockproof container and slung it across his back. Vela leaned on him as they walked, still regaining her strength. The journey was not easy. Hills and dense vines slowed their steps. Insects buzzed. Strange birds cried overhead, but no ships followed. No drones appeared. For the first time in days, they were truly ahead. That night, they camped beneath a natural stone arch. Jace built a small fire using dry bark and flint. Vela sat beside him, wrapped in a thermal blanket. She studied his face with a quiet curiosity. "You have killed before," she said gently. Jace nodded. "Too many times. Yet you carry life now," she added, glancing at the pod. He looked into the flames. "Maybe it's time I did something worth remembering." Vela shifted closer. Her head rested lightly against his shoulder. "We don't bond easily, my kind. To share blood is sacred. To survive it even more rare." He looked down at her. "Do you regret it?" She smiled softly. "No. I would rather be bound to a warrior with a heart than a prince with nothing to offer." The next morning, the wind changed. A smell of ash came from the north. Jace climbed a nearby ridge and saw the smoke. The enemy had burned the tunnel behind them. They were destroying every trace of her past. "They want your kind erased," he said when he returned. Vela's voice was calm. "Then we must make sure they fail." By midday, they reached the canyon. It was hidden behind thick vines and steep stone walls. From the outside, it looked like nothing but a dead end. But when Vela stepped forward and placed her glowing hand against the rock, a shimmer passed through the cliff face. The wall melted into light. A narrow path appeared, lit by soft blue lines etched into the stone. The air inside was warm and filled with the scent of clean water and flowers. Jace followed her in. The cave stretched deep into the earth. At its heart lay a pool of crystal clear liquid, and above it, a circle of mirrors reflected the stars, even though the sky was hidden. "This is the cradle," Vela said. "Place the pod in the pool." Jace knelt and gently lowered the pod into the water. The moment it touched the surface, the pool lit up. The walls shimmered. A hum filled the chamber. Life was waking. Vela stepped into the light. Her body glowed brighter. Her markings danced with energy. She turned to Jace with joy in her eyes. "You did it. You brought me home," she said. And behind her, shadows began to form. Not threats, but shapes. Beings, others like her, emerging from the mirrors. From the light, from the past. Jace stepped back as the figures emerged from the glowing pool of light. They were tall and elegant, with glowing skin and golden eyes like Vela. Some had silver markings, others bore deep crimson lines that pulsed like veins. None of them spoke, but their presence filled the air with silent power. Vela turned to them, arms outstretched. One by one, they approached and touched her shoulders, her hands, her face. It was not a greeting of royalty, but a reunion of kin thought lost forever. Jace watched, unsure whether he belonged here. These were ancient beings, born from a race so different from his. Yet Vela turned and reached for his hand, pulling him into the circle. She spoke in her own language. The others listened. Then they turned their golden eyes to Jace. One of them stepped forward, a female with long silver hair and armor carved from what looked like crystal. She examined Jace with a calm expression. Then she placed her hand on his chest and closed her eyes. A soft red glow passed between them. When she opened her eyes again, she nodded slowly. "He is true-bound," she said in clear English. The others bowed their heads in agreement. Jace stood frozen, unsure what to say. Vela stepped beside him and squeezed his hand gently. "They accept you," she whispered, "even though I'm not one of you?" He asked. "You carry what matters," she said, pointing to her chest. "The bond, the will to protect." "That is enough." The chamber pulsed again. More shapes rose from the mirrors, young ones, children, fragile and blinking. They walked into the arms of their elders. The pod had not just awakened the old, but had begun to birth the next generation. Tears welled in Vela's eyes. Jace had never seen her cry before. She knelt beside one of the children and whispered something in her language. The child smiled and touched Vela's cheek. For a moment, Jace forgot the war. He forgot the enemy ships, the death, the ruins. In this sacred place, life was beginning again. And he had helped make it possible, but the peace was brief. The canyon above rumbled. A high-pitched whine filled the air. The enemy had traced the final signal. They had found the sanctuary. Vela rose instantly. They come. One last time, Jace grabbed his rifle. He looked at the elders. They were powerful, but unarmed. They had just awakened. They couldn't fight, not yet. We hold the gate, he said. Vela nodded. Together, they rushed to the canyon entrance. A wall of light sealed the opening, but it flickered now, cracking at the edges. Shadows gathered beyond it. Jace saw the outlines of soldiers, heavy weapons, scanning drones. They want the blood, he said. They want to erase the hope. Vela replied. The silver-haired elder joined them. She held a staff made of the same crystal as her armor. We will stand with you. One last time, Jace took position behind a stone barricade. Vela stood beside him, her markings glowing bright again. Her strength had returned. The bond had given her power. His presence had restored her core. The wall burst inward. The first wave poured through. Jace fired 1, 2, 3 clean shots. The crystal staff beside him released a wave of light that shattered a group of drones. Vela leapt forward, her body moving with grace and fury. She struck a soldier to the ground with a single glowing pulse. Another fell to a spear thrown by one of the newly awakened. It was not a battle of armies. It was a stand of purpose. They fought with everything they had. Blood hit the ground, red, blue, silver. The bond between Jace and Vela blazed like fire. When she weakened, he stood over her. When he fell, she lifted him back up. Hours passed like minutes. The sky burned above, but the cave still held. Finally, silence returned. Smoke drifted through the air. The enemy was retreating. The survivors gathered. The gate still stood. Vela knelt beside a wounded elder and healed her with a touch. Jace stood guard, watching the horizon. No more ships came. No more enemies approached. The sanctuary had survived. Jace turned to Vela. She looked at him with tired but peaceful eyes. It is done, she said. He nodded. You're free. She stepped closer. Not without you. The remaining elders formed a circle once more. They began a soft chant. Light filled the chamber again. Not a weapon, but a celebration. The bloodline had endured. The future had awakened. And at the center stood a human and an alien princess, bound not by fear, but by choice. Asterisk morning light filtered through the canyon trees as peace returned to the forest below. The smoke had cleared. The ground still bore scars of battle, but the air now carried silence instead of death. The sanctuary stood untouched. Inside, the light of the pot had faded into the pool, its purpose fulfilled. Vela walked slowly along the sacred edge of the cave, her hands brushing the glowing walls. She wore a new cloak woven from the fibers of her people, marked with a red thread that traced the shape of Jace's sigil, his military patch. Now honored in alien cloth, Jace stood at the edge of the water, watching the mirrored ceiling above. The stars reflected there no longer looked distant. They looked reachable. For the first time in years, he felt like something bigger than war had touched his life. The silver-haired elder approached and bowed her head. The line has survived, she said. But survival is not enough. We must rebuild. And we cannot do it without you. Jace turned. I'm no builder. I'm just a soldier. You are more than that, the elder said. You are the bond. You are the choice that was never forced. And because of that, you are the beginning of something new. Vela joined him, her golden eyes calm. She reached for his hand and held it tightly. You never asked for this, but you never ran from it. That is why I want you to stay." Jace didn't answer right away. He looked toward the canyon path, the one that led back to the world he came from. A world still broken. A world that had forgotten what sacred meant. He closed his eyes and remembered the cry he first heard in the rubble. The moment he touched her blood. The shock. The fear. The bond. All of it had led here. When he opened his eyes, he turned to Vela. "I'm not going back," he said quietly. She smiled and leaned into him. "Then let us begin." Work began that day. The sanctuary became more than a hiding place. It became a home. The newly awakened ones cleared old halls, repaired broken machines, and planted seeds around the cave. Light returned to a forgotten land. Jace taught what he knew: how to defend without hate, how to build shelters from broken things, how to read stars, track enemies, and think like humans when needed. In return, the elders taught him about energy threads, memory stones, and living architecture. He learned that the bond did not fade with time. It grew. He could feel Vela even when she was far. When she laughed, his chest felt lighter. When she hurt, his breath caught. Their lives had become one rhythm. One night, under the starlit mirror above the pool, Vela stood before the people. Her voice carried strength now, not just beauty. "I named this place Arela," she said. "The heart of what will come. A place for both bloodlines to stand together." The elders agreed. They added human designs to their carvings. Jace's patch was etched into the wall beside Vela's crown. Unity was no longer just a bond between two. It had spread through the sanctuary. Months passed. Then a human ship appeared above the canyon. Jace and Vela stood at the edge of the forest, watching the descent. It was not an enemy vessel. It bore a peace flag, an old Earth emblem worn during ceasefire missions. They had come not to conquer, but to ask. A man in uniform stepped out. He recognized Jace, saluted. "We received a signal. One we couldn't decode. It came with your ID tag. Is this where you've been?" Jace nodded. "This is where I'm staying." The man looked past him and saw Vela, her ears, her markings, her calm power. His face softened. "We've heard rumors. A new race. A new alliance. But no one believed it. Believe it now," Jace said. The man left that day with recordings, coordinates, and a promise not to reveal the location until the council was ready. Vela trusted Jace's judgment. If peace could spread, they would welcome it. If war returned, they would be ready. Seasons changed. Arela grew. Children of both kinds played in the garden caves. The walls now glowed not just with old light, but with laughter and music. Life as it was meant to be had begun again. And in the center, always together, were a human soldier and an alien princess, bonded by blood, tested by fire, and chosen by fate, not by accident, not by law, but by love.